Blessings. Welcome forward to Reasonings right here at the Tree of Life. I'm your host, the Great Owl, right here at home in the mountains, the Blue Mountains of Jamaica. Yeah, welcoming you to this cycle within cycle 2021. Eyes open, clairvoyance, clear voyage, yeah, in time and space. It's an awesome time to be present in the presence of being, presence of mind, beingfulness, mindfulness. Absolutely a joy to be present in another awesome cycle within cycle of this human experience. There's so much of it that we absorb into ourselves and fashion as our own, and as such it has become a gift to understand the beauty of self-expression in an entangled environmental field of awesome possibilities and potentials. One of the most interesting things, as I am here with you present, is the three maxims making one clarity. Those three maxims, paradox, making one reality, is denying self, becoming self, overcoming self. What maxims, what paradoxical analogies? Denying self, becoming self, overcoming self. Great Owl, in all of your aloofness, please elaborate for the people on these matters. Exactly this pronouncement. What do I mean by denying self? Then becoming self, then overcoming self. Why deny to become, then needing to overcome? What paradoxes? Let's engage. Many human beings in this reality just think life is an automaton, something already completely designed, set in motion, and the emotions of it is just our experience. We can't do anything about it. Such humans believe we are moved to and fro by the winds of time and the winds of change, because there is no other state in which these things would arise but the natural, predesigned, predestined states. These individuals have no concept, no belief, no attitude towards an individual understanding, expression, experience of self. These individuals live a pre-programmed experience. If the masses say this is what it is, then this is what it is. Such individuals are apt always to use the pre-designed statements, structures, belief systems of self-analysis, and will gladly accept we're just here as a natural part of this awesome yet unfathomable environment, and just being victims of the social, religious, political, environmental creeds of our existence. They arise as fixings within nature. There's no independent mentation, there's no separation in space and time and perceptivity of space and time. It's just life, man. Get with it. You know, this is how I am, man. Circumstances made me what I am, brother. Can't you see? Can't you feel my pain? I can't get into those philosophies you be speaking about, all those things you be talking about. Ain't be relating to me, brother. Can't you see me here suffering? And so, the denial of self, the choice, the ability to direct, to propel, to have the steering wheels of directivity in relativity and actuality. Many individuals deny that there's any such power. Denial of self. Absolute denial of this independent mentation that affects the whole vibration of creation. So, denying self, denying responsibilities, denying rights, living by the winds of movement, living by the perpetual meandering of the streams of life. No rudder, no steering wheel, no brake, no anchor. Just what is denial of self. Becoming self, on the other hand, is a task. Because seeing, as many of us interpret it, the essence of the zero, the multiplication of that simplification, we recognize within this calculation is an actual end result based upon the actual calculation. So we recognize there is a movement from the zero into one, two, one to two to two to two to 1, 2, 3. I said 1, 2, 4, 5, 9, 9, 9, 1, 2, 2, 3, 5, 9, 9, 9, 9. We recognize a symmetry, a sequential order that if we but follow the entangled spiral of self-expression from the push and the pull, the opposing forces of volition, we recognize, alas, there is a independent mentation among the constancy of this eternal vibration. And when one approaches the becoming, one begins to see from the impersonal, from overstanding the vastness of what is, that there is something in the micro that is also in the macro. And just as the macro is sacrosanct, the micro is sacrosanct to the same order, to the same sequence, to the same frequency. So frequently we journey into the inner cosmos, seeking the ambits, the dimensions of self, to know, to become, to actualize that which is the macro in the micro. Hallelujah. And as such, the becoming of self is wrought with the environmental tensions and retentions of generational engagement and entanglement. And so then breaking from the creeds of these rudderless ships that is being driven aimlessly by just the flow, one begins to amass the knowledge of the designed methodology, of the ingenious nature of the internal spirit manifesting as the correlation of thought, and from thought action, and from the independent mentation of mind, one begins to understand there's something unique about the individual soul and its expression upon the entangled planes of the environmental field. Reality reacts to this individuation most amazingly. Not just this individuation reacting to the collective. So the becoming of self begins to become calculable, and one begins to see from the vastness of experience that there's something unique in the micro, and begin to speak from this, challenging these generational movements of stillness that will only keep itself in that rhythm because it has not expressed anything else. It has not explored. And so the individuation now is the movement to go from that congealed mass to be that fluidity, to be the flow. Becoming self is a process of growing, movement, flowing, like water, like air, growing, like trees, still flowing, still moving into the greater knowing and awareness of the individuation within the collective vibration. It's awesome when we understand that that self is never against, even though it challenges societal norms, it challenges old patterns of behavior, because it cannot be limited, because so was, is, and is to be. The eternal nature is still expressing in the present. It's not a fixed premise or reality. And that is why many who deny self will only accept the fixed without responsibility, this movement within the becoming of self, to challenge these said to be norms, and breaking these, I would say, unconscious patterns that aren't really necessary at times, but conjecture a sense of connection to the past. And so they hold a traditional place within our cosmic awareness. However, if we are completely given over unto them, the achievements today, the movement in even the external human environment would not have been possible if we had stayed in just the innocence of the unknowing. And so in the becoming, you are responsible. You have to know that. And there are rights you have, but you have to be responsible with these powers of thought and mentation that you now recognize that the collective responds to the individuation. So the individual man, the individual woman that you are becomes responsive to the greater context that all of us have a core connection to our source, the Most High, and that divine responsibility reflects in the experiences of ourselves and others. So the becoming self has to know you can't just be anything you feel you want to be. You can't just do as thou wilt and think there will not be any consequences equal to your aberration. All these manifestations are equal, and they are movements from the zero into all of its calculus and to all of its calculation, which includes you and me. And so, when we calculate the presence of the actual being, the self that we are, individuals are motivated beyond the fixed premise of just this given reality that is limited to an eternal presence. And that is what it's all about. The eternal presence shows you always that we cannot just only be fixed. We're also mobile. We're also the motion, the emotions of it. So we're not limited to one part of the spectrum. Yeah, that's why we're still going. Yeah, that's why it's still world without end. We got to remember these things in the becoming, so we don't just become a selfish version of distractions, or a more disoriented version of distraction. We must become more aware of our collective responsibilities within our individuation. It is what makes us the macro in the micro. We always got to remember this. And then in the becoming self, the risk of overinflating self to want to have power, the will to power over other expressions of divine self. You find that there is this conflict. And here is where now we will sojourn into reasons why overcoming this self is necessary. Is it that we are overcoming the misappropriations thereof, the egocentric, egomaniac, egoic life? Is that what we are saying? Stay with me, brothers and sisters. There's yet more to come. Becoming the greatest version of yourself, the essence of what it is sold to us. But is it the greatest version of yourself? Or is it that you're already the greatest version of yourself, and all you're doing is becoming aware of the actuality of self? It is not just a sculpting. It is not just an ego tripping. It is not just a power over the masses, intellectual dichotomy, pedantry. It is not just that, actually. There is something actual in being self. But when the becoming is the awakened understanding, there is peace. There's no need to be overly overt, covert, or any other vert, because one understands the nature of self as being. However, when the becoming is driven by externalization, will to power, to be, to dominate, then the need to overcome these misperceptions of self is the overcoming of self. Overcome your fears, brothers and sisters. Overcome your limited self-perceptions. Overcome your egoic mind processes, patterns, and patterns. Overcome yourself. Forgive yourself. Get over yourself. It is not that important that you should die with things that decay in a constancy of death, decay, rebirth. Let that which is in cycles of itself be in cycles of itself. Can you chase down and hold with your fist a mighty grasp of wind? Let that which is without control within your consciousness be. Let it be. You cannot control it. Let it flow like the endless seasons of rainy, sunny, and windy day. Forecasts and projections thereof do not change, nor do they create these occurrences. So accept, accept, accept. Accept the way. Greet the day with a calmative understanding of the unity of denying the self, becoming the self, now overcoming the self. It is good when one is aware of one's brilliance, one's abilities, one's effort to fulfillment, one's effort to achievement, the accolades of life being manifest as one's life. It is awesome to be aware. But also all things great, grand, and simple also return into the cycle of death, decay, death, and rebirth. It goes into this endless cycle of decay, death, and rebirth. So the greatest good, the highest accolade, the grandest achievement is paled in time and space. So the hunger to recreate continues in man, greater at times than before, and hence the egoic mind overcoming the presence of self with all of that misperception. The true overcoming of self isn't unto selfishness. It is to recognize no matter how great you are still a part of the grandest, greatest thing, that you could never see the greatest of it, because it is eternal, was, is, and is to come. Yahuwah, divine creator, is unfathomable in the complete nature of what life is. So it is good when one knows there is independent mentation. You do have a purpose and a function independent of just the flow of the expectations of others. You can decide, manifest through responsibility, this becoming of this self. The responsibility is yours, such as the rights to actualize this deep knowing, this actual self. So when the self is here, it is a responsibility to keep that self in alignment with truth and love and harmony, not doing harm to others just that you can have your great moment of folly. The overcoming of self reminds us it is not all to praise ourselves for what we have done. That too decays. That's why death removes the image of man from the constancy of man. So the personalities will go, but man is eternal. And this is the essence of why it is good to overcome the self. It is not an overcoming of the knowing, it's an overcoming of the misappropriations of that knowing, so that you can be checked. It is not wise to be ignorant like it is when you deny self. So it's not a good state to be in the denial of self. In the becoming of self, you should not dwell too much on your gifts or your potentials, because that will make you vain. So when you have become this self, don't be overly carried away with your achievement and your great prowess, because that too decays and dies and has to come again, if only you are able to. Many does not have that gift. They have gone into the nothingness, and their personalities aren't even remembered. So overcoming the misperceptions of self, accepting the awesomeness of self, never denying self of its actuality, respecting the actuality of self, knowing the rights and responsibilities of self, so one can explore self, growing self-awareness and expression, and be pleased when the I and I, the all selves, express in collective harmony. Glory to the divine, as we divinely continue on our path of self-actualization, self-awakened activity, where the value of this experience is lived, felt, and known by each individuation of the collective vibration. Love, blessings, 2021, 2021 reasons why we should always deny self, become self, and overcome self in the awesomeness of being self. Glory and honor. This has been the Great Owl right here, Reasonings at the Tree of Life, reminding you of the awesome gift that you are.